Hello and welcome to Aquarium Dilemmas. I'm your host, ScienceGal Aquatics. I'm Kerri, and this is my co-host,
Jesse, and welcome to another wonderful episode of Aquarium Dilemmas.
Thank you so much for listening. It's been really fun talking about all these fun topics.
And in this topic, whether going to the fish store or like us, we're going to take a trip and there's going to be a lot of fish and auctions and stuff going on around us. You don't want to impulse buy, but everybody knows you do it from time to time. It's going to happen. You're going to do it, whether you're at a fish store, an auction, a trade show, whatever. It's going to happen. You're going to see something. I just got to have it.
Yes. And this is definitely something. When I first started fish keeping, I did not give any of these. Some of these are relatively easy questions to ask yourself or someone around before you buy fish. And there's just a handful of things that kind of, whether you're off to the side Googling things really quick, or you ask the shop attendant, or you've done your research beforehand, these are some things that are important to know before you buy fish. But when I first started out, I did not ask one of these questions. And then I've gotten to a point when I was a little bit, had some experience, not much, but a little bit. I would ask a few, but there's definitely a handful of things that you should find out before you buy a fish, even if it's impulse bought. And you're, like I said, over to the side trying to Google things really quick. There are some things that's important to know.
Well, and there's
impulse buying or not.
And there's some of this that you can do as internal dialogue in your mind.
It's not.
You don't even have to Google it or anything. Just things you should think in the back of your head
to be
and
like,
just roll through that and go, oh, okay, this will work. Or whoa, back up a second. This could be a big no-no.
Yeah. And sometimes certain stores even have, depending on the store, have like a little information by the tank that you're like, okay, yeah, But it's just starting out, the size of your fish. If you're going through the fish store and you're scanning to see what they have, or if we're at an auction, how big do the fish even grow to? Sometimes, a lot of times, they say a fish can grow to its full potential, and it might not be that big or that, that certain size. But a lot of times, if they say, hey, this fish is going to grow 2 feet, chances are it's going to grow pretty close
to 2
that 2 feet. And then like my guppies and my nanofish, they stay really small. So I can have a little bit more of a variety or more of that one species in that 10-gallon, 20-gallon tank. But knowing the size, and like I said, this is not a hard question to be like, hey, how big do these fish get? But going back to the beginning of my fish keeping career, when I would just go to the fish store with my dad and I was like, ooh, that one's pretty. I want that one. Granted, luckily, she kept mostly small nano fish, but that could have got me in a lot more trouble than it did if for some reason, or like common plecos.
And it's only got you in trouble one time with the arowana.
Yeah, but I kind of, luckily I like to think a little bit more, research savvy, but I knew arowanas got big, but I didn't that topic. I didn't know how big they got that quick.
Yes.
They got big. Yes. I knew they got big, but I didn't know I had under a year before they went from a tiny little 10-gallon tank to a 180-gallon tank. So yes, even how quick they grow is something that you should know when it comes to larger fish.
Well, and we're going to kind of preface this that you're trying to build a tank of community type fish. Because a lot of these questions are, you got 1 or 2 aquariums and you're wanting to add to it.
Yeah. I mean, in any scenario, whether you have room and like us and we have a lot of tanks, or you just have one tank, I feel like these small little things are just good to know regardless. But yes, like you said.
all of these you need to run at least through your brain, in my opinion, now that I know more about this. I mean, and going with how big it's going to get right into what's it going to eat? What's its
Well,
diet?
going back, like the big thing, I really love plecos, plecosomus. I love them. I have them in a lot of my tanks, but I know common plecos are very commonly sold, and they get huge and require more than just feeding on the bottom of your tank as a cleanup crew. Certain plecos need certain specific diets, and that leads into another thing. But going back, the size, I didn't know that they got big, and I never fed them right back then to get them that big. But even that mistake that, let's say you buy a common pleco and you think it's going to be 4 inches and it's like a foot long, if you do have a variety diet, you just have to know, it's very important, the potential size.
Yes.
And some of them, obviously, you go into a fish store, it's pretty common that guppies are going to stay small. But there's other fish out there that they sell as very young juvenile fish that I had no clue that they're like, whoa, I didn't know. Like,
oh, yeah.
Certain barbs, I was like, wow, those are tiny in the store. I had no idea they got that big. Have I kept them successfully? No. And I've only tried once. But I just didn't realize that. And even an angelfish, just a basic angelfish. My dad has a beautiful angelfish tank, and we got them when they were like a quarter size, and now they're the palm of my hand size, and they're still probably growing. So even an angelfish, if kept correctly, can grow, or goldfish, if you don't keep them in the wrong parameters, can grow quite large. And I think there's a lot of fish out there that you see them so small in the fish store that if you just buy them and you don't know what you bought, they can get quite large on you quickly.
Yes.
But then going into diet, yeah, that's a very important thing that you should know is what they eat.
Well, it ties in with your pleco. The size, for most people, a common pleco is not something I would recommend purchasing.
And that was something I learned to know. I didn't know that I wouldn't have recommended them. I love plecos, but there's far better choices out there than a common pleco.
Oh, yes. But it's the only thing we can keep with the arowana.
Yes.
And luckily, a common pleco into the diet needs a little bit meatier of a diet than a regular small, like bristlenose pleco or something like that doesn't get that big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even
that
with
is
them,
an omnivore that just likes any algae, veggie rounds, extra stuff like that.
Yeah, I know that there's I don't know the names off the top of my head because I haven't kept some of the fancier ones, but I don't know how to explain this in a very eloquent way, but I was under the assumption, like I think a lot of new fish keepers, that all I needed to feed my pleco, no matter what kind of pleco it was, or plecosomus it was they were my cleanup crew. I didn't have to feed them anything. They just cleaned up the tank and they lived on that. And no matter if it's more of a plant-based, where they like more of like a plant diet, I guess, or it's more of a meat eater where they need bloodworms. I mean, that common pleco upstairs likes to have some meat in its diet of some kind. And then there's some that I always think it's a good note to put driftwood in all of my tanks with them, but some need it to wrasse more than others. Some really require that. And I lost a lot of them because I just they would grow. I would keep them for a while, but I never really understood why I kept losing them when I would get to a certain size. And then when I finally researched it and I was like, oh, you have to feed them like other things to be okay. It was a moment that I could have solved so easily that it took me a while. And whether it's a small one, which I do recommend, like the rubber lips or the bristle nose, or there's some high fin ones that do stay smaller that I really enjoy. But you do have to look into their specific species to know, okay, I'm going to be okay more with veggie rounds and some driftwood, or maybe this one I need to have some bloodworms. And it seems like that common pleco upstairs needs to have some meat. And if it doesn't, I promise something about other fish's eyeballs that is very attracted to. And I'm glad that I've learned. I just wish I would have learned a lot sooner because I wouldn't have lost so many things. But diet, even the guppies I just constantly fed them flakes and they were fine. But now that I have a more variety of diet.
Yeah. Well, the big thing is, we've said it in past episodes, we're going to say it again in this one, is almost all your fish need a variety of diet. You might have we'll just use guppies. They love the flakes, but however, we do feed a little bit of bloodworms, a little bit of other things as a special treat. So they have a variety. So when you're picking up this other fish, what are you going to need to add to that variety of diet that you're already feeding the fish that are in that tank? Or is everything going to be about the same, but maybe that special treat you gave to the guppies is more going to be the main food source for the new fish you're putting in that tank?
And yes, that's very important. But like when I first kept betas or betas, however you
beta
want to say it, again, I fed them fish flakes and they did good. But once I did research and I realized that they really need insect larvae and mosquito larvae and some insect protein in their diet, and instead of feeding fish flakes all the time, I got some little granules like bug bites that are made more of insect. It's a really basic switch. I can still pick it up at the fish store, but they do tremendously better because their diet, granted the ones I keep have never been in nature, but the ones that are kept in nature, they need more than just a fish flake. Do I still feed it from time to time to kind of have a variety of things? Yes. And like they're rice fish. I couldn't get them to breed until they were outside, and all that insects that I really just don't even see all the extra protein.
All the microorganisms
that they really need, and them guppies, like you said, they do good with fish flakes. They do good with a variety. They do much better. But there are some fish out there that you might need to hatch baby brine shrimp. They might need that certain specialty type fish.
Yes.
So having a variety and different proteins, and the fish flakes will always be a staple in my fish room. I like feeding fish flakes, but I try krill flakes too now instead of, or spirulina type flakes. I love the tetra flakes, but even that, have a variety. But one of the big things I've learned is just not everything can live on fish flakes. And bottom feeders, your cleanup crew, you still have to know their diet. And if you can get by with a quick Google search and be like, okay, I think I could do this, I know I have that, you don't have to have everything right then, but just know if you choose to buy that fish and impulse that fish, just know that look more into it, because yes, you might have it and they'll be okay, they'll live, but they might do better with doing a little research and knowing specifically, hey, I'm going to try this and get this in their diet.
Well, and it's just going to be like a human. You're not going to want to eat chicken every day of the week, 7 days a week, and that's it.
Well, some probably could, and
I'm sure there's people out there that can, but you're eventually going to get bored with it. Well, fish are the same way, and they need a variety diet too.
Especially if you're going to breed. I have realized that if your goal is to breed them versus just to keep them and enjoy them, there's some times that you have to get, I wouldn't say it's a harder food to get or a more advanced food. That seems a bit drastic, but more of a variety. You might have to try hatching baby brine shrimp for that fry to live. You might have to play around with it for the sake of that new fish keeper that's just getting in the hobby and they're buying their first fish. Just know that you need to know what they're going to eat along with how big they're going to get. And you can go down the rabbit hole, but there's certain things that, hey, feeding this betta gold or fish flakes or this common pleco, you know, I don't know, the leftover for is just not the way to go, and it's going to cause you a lot of problems.
Well, and
now that it's so easy to do research on your phone, like, it's really easy to get your hands on some information to know. Quickly in the corner or the back room of the fish store.
And to me, leading in with the diet and stuff is going to be the next thing of, okay, I'm feeding all these whatever, one type of food. Is everything going to be okay? Is it peaceful, aggressive? What you're wanting to add to this community tank?
Yeah.
And the next three, to me, kind of tie together is peaceful versus aggressive and territorial, and does everything cohesive?
Yes, all the compatibility factors of tank mates. But yeah, going back just a step, going back to diet just a little bit. If you choose to keep a community tank, you have to feed, like we feed things to the common pleco and certain things to the arowana to make sure they both get fed.
Yes.
But leading into, I'm just going to preface this. You can research, and I recommend you research more. But certain fish, you won't know their personality until you keep them. And the biggest one, I keep going back, is beta beta. You can read, some are aggressive, some are peaceful, some are cranky, some are happy, some get along with everybody, and some don't get along with nothing. And that's the one fish that I've kept that's like that. You can read like tank and all that, and yes, that's right. But when it comes to personality with them, you really don't know until you keep them, and that goes, I'm sure, to a lot of different fish out there. But
well, I think it also goes with angels, because angels, to me, some people would say they're aggressive, but to me, they're not aggressive. They're just very territorial.
It just depends. And there's, out of the long list of fish that I wish I could keep, or that I just wish I have more experience with different ones. But even in my small fish keeping that of the species I've kept, I've had some that are very peaceful. Not just angelfish, but certain, just things that just get along great. And then you could go back and get the same fish and put it in the same, like a different, and they just don't get along with anybody. And it's just like, really? But angels and betas are definitely the ones that are like that for me. But just know that sometimes too, like with the angelfish that we have upstairs, we have them with some tetra, and they get along great now. But at first, like you said, it was a little territorial of a certain spot. And it wouldn't nip their fins, but it would just shoo them away. It didn't want anybody around its spot. And now they all swim together, and it works out great. But it did take some time. But other fish like
that is what I'm saying. It could be misconstrued as aggression, whereas it wasn't aggression. The angelfish did not want the tetra in this one certain specific little spot. Other than that, it was fine.
Yeah.
It was not an aggressive fish in any way towards the tetra.
But at the same time, there's definitely some that are, they ain't going to be with anybody else. And Aramica splendens, they aren't, there might be an exception to the rule somewhere, but I know my Amica splendens personally that I keep do not get along with any other fish. If I put anything in there, they're gonna snack it up real quick. And like the silver arowana upstairs, there's not a whole lot of fish that I can put with that arowana because they're already gonna have to be ginormous because everything's food. And with the guppies, I've had some guppies that I've had a beautiful tank with many guppies and different things in it. And there's like one that just won't get along with the others. That's just shredding everybody's fin. So you can get some general knowledge to be like, typically this species gets along with everybody. Typically it's very peaceful. Or typically it's territorial and it needs its space. Like, me personally, I've never kept betas with anything else. But if you have a beautiful, huge 300-gallon planted tank where they could have their individual spot,
That's a very good point.
In theory, you
It's
could
space.
do it, but you need a lot of space because they're very territorial to their area. Have I tried it? Have I ever? Will I ever? No. But a lot of this is going to be general advice. Maybe the fish keeper at the pet store that's keeping them will probably be your best option. Be like, look, if there's one fish you're eyeballing, does this fish get along with others? Have you tried to keep it with others? Is it aggressive? Is it territorial? With the knife fish that I kept, it was peaceful. It got along with everybody, but it was really stressed out until I went back to the pet store and got its particular cave that wasn't for sale, that I had to beg, be like, please sell me this cave. And then they let me have it. And then everything completely turned around because it just really was attached to that particular hideout. And everything got along after that. But there are some species that you can go to that's just generally, like guppies, they're generally peaceful. Like I said, I might have one here and there that's like, oh, really? But generally speaking, they're really peaceful.
There's always exceptions to the rules. Again, it's definitely, there is fish personality.
Yeah.
And there's exceptions.
Large or small.
Yes. There's exceptions where they say, no, you can't do this. And you do it, and it works out great.
Yeah. Yeah, like my dad's angelfish tank, like I said, he keeps neon tetra in there. And I have been told, like, that is not a good idea. Those angelfish in time will eat them. But everything's getting along great. So it's species specific, it's fish specific, but it is a very good idea to know, even generally speaking, this is going to be peaceful. This is going to be aggressive. This is going to be territorial. I'm going to need this or this with this fish. And like we said, there's always exceptions, but you got to know if you're going to put a known aggressive species that's a cichlid, that's probably not going to work very well with a really calm guppy population. Well, there's just some things that you should know that. And then if you want to still try it and it works for you, then it works for you. But I still feel like even saying there's exceptions, it's nice and a must know the personality of what you're going to keep.
Well, and the two things that run through the back of my head when you're talking about adding fish and hoping that everybody's going to be peaceful and happy is how much room am I dealing with?
Yes.
How big a tank am I dealing with? Am I going to be able to cheat the rule because I have a bigger tank? So they're going to have more room to separate and they can have their own little territory. And where are they going to be at in the water column? Are they going to be in the middle, at the top, or the bottom?
Yeah, knowing, along with the personality of them generally speaking, knowing where they inhabit the tank is really, that was one that I really didn't give any thought to way later. Like, I would pay attention when I was probably teens and 20s, keeping fish to the size and kind of the diet of, like, along the flakes of fish flakes. But knowing, hey, if I'm going to have a community tank, maybe I should have some bottom-dwelling shrimp, Neocaridea shrimp. And the guppies are going to occupy all the levels. And then maybe have something that occupies just kind of on the top level. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that we have currently that just stays on the top. But there's definitely certain fish out there that stay in their level, and that's where they're comfortable. The top-dwelling fish. I didn't have anything with it, but I've had a freshwater African butterfly fish that reminded me so much of just a teeny tiny little baby arowana. And even the way it ate its food, it was so small, but it was always at the surface. And I really think to appreciate that fish, that top view was just to look at that fish head on. Like, the side was great, but looking from the top down was really cool. That fish was really cool. It was a jumper, unfortunately, but it always stayed at the top. There might have been a time it swam to the bottom, but very rarely. So there's definitely some fish out there that if you want to have a community take and you want to have a really nice community of different types of fish, take in that thought of where are they going to occupy it.
Yes.
So you can fill that tank with all of the different levels.
Well, I mean,
the
you
water
got like
column.
if you're not going with shrimp, and let's say you're going to have a little bit bigger fish in the midsection, there's all different types of cories and stuff that are all
there's
are,
all different.
are all that's where they're at. They're at the bottom. They
Yep.
stay down there and
Yep.
they go to town.
Yep.
And they have a blast playing in the substrate.
Yeah, for sure. There's types of things, and I definitely wish that even more of just I've gotten to keep so many more, and hopefully in the future I do get to keep different types of fish and break out of even like I feel like I've broken out of the box so much, but even there's so many fish out there that I wish I had experience personally keeping, but yeah, in time. We're going to the auction soon.
Well, and again, with the aggression and the peaceful and the territorial, the other thing is when you're buying fish, do you need to just buy one? Because there's a lot of things as far as schooling fish and like live bears, which you know a ton about. You want 2 females to every 1 male.
Yeah.
That you're getting, and then like tetra, your rasboras, your danios, stuff like that. You want a school of like 6 or so, and they feel more comfortable. The fish aren't stressed out, and they're more peaceful and less aggressive to anything else in the tank.
Yeah. And that was another thing that I didn't give any thought to in the beginning. I just was like, I want whatever number comes to my head. And sometimes that works. And sometimes it does not. And knowing even like I can't say it enough. I love my guppies. But when I go to a fish store now and I'm allowed to have an option. Some fish stores out there, they don't want to sex them for you. They just want a number. And some will. It just depends. But if I can go and instead of picking out 10, I'll just pick out a good trio, 2 females and a male. And that works for me. And like you said, there's certain fish out there that just do so much better with a small group. And that would be the one that I would inevitably probably just pick one and bring home. Be like, I want 1 neon tetra. And be like, what? So I'm glad that that's a really important thing to think about is just.
To me, it's a really good tip because it plays in so well with everything because it can. We don't keep, but I've heard tons of stories about even with certain types of cichlids and stuff, having multiple ones, it helps curb aggression.
Yeah.
And then they're more just, if it's a big enough tank, they're just more territorial on one side of the tank or in one part of the tank, mid-level, high level. So all that kind of really plays together really nicely and you can work with it in a dynamic of building that community of what you're looking for in your tank.
Yeah. If you want to build a community against just one showpiece fish and get that showpiece fish and then do some research to know what's best compatible and then build your community from there, that's whatever. But I just feel like it was a really important thing for me to have an epiphany moment of just realizing that I would go in there and be like, I want that fish because it's got pretty colors and I want 6 of them. And there is no rhyme or reason to the number. And some, like when we had that freshwater lionfish.
Yes.
It just needed to be. Or even the silver arowana, I didn't need to. I'm glad they didn't have to. It does well with just one. So some you need a good ratio of males to females is what you need to think about. Some is if it's schooling or shoaling type of fish to have a small group, and others if it's more of a predatory or stealthy type hunter, you might slowly lose your fish one by one. So there's some things just knowing, just how many you should get and is just really important.
Yeah, the dynamic
Yeah.
of the fish. But we're concentrating on more of a peaceful community tank.
It just comes down to what type of tank, the fish keeper you want to be, just whatever you fancy, what you want to keep.
Oh, yes, absolutely. 100%.
I guess another one is the lifespan. How long are they going to live for?
Yeah, the lifespan, and to tie in with that, I also think is water parameters, because that has a lot to do with the lifespan. If you're trying to keep a big community tank, you would like all of your fish to have pretty well close to the same amount of water parameters. That way you're going to get the most life, in my opinion, out of all of your fish for that period of time.
Yeah, I was kind of saving the parameters for last because it's definitely overall, I would say, a really important one. But I've gone through phases where, again, in the beginning of my fish keeping career, I was lucky to even know what the word parameter was. Like, I didn't give it a lick of thought. I didn't even know nothing.
Well,
and then I went through a phase where I was trying too much to get everything just dead on. And with me, I don't chase numbers. So I tend to keep what I know does well in my water. But even saying that, you need to know what your water is. I like to keep hard water type fish because my fish room has really hard water. But I had to get to the point where I even knew that was important to know the difference between hard and soft water. So I don't have any luck personally using the ups and downs and getting this and that. I mainly want to know if it's a hard water fish.
And the temperature.
And, roughly the pH, because where I get my fish currently, granted, I do order from time to time, but it's been a long time since I've ordered online. I know from just talking with them that their water's the same pH range I am. So my main concern is the temperature. But if you're new, my best recommendation when it comes to water parameters is know if your water's hard or soft. You generally know that once you get asked, because if you have hard water like we do, you know.
You get the buildup,
yeah. And the pH, it's really important to know your pH of your water, but I just make sure when I do my research or I'm Googling in the side in the fish store, okay, my pH is from this to this, and this fish can tolerate this to this. So my main concern is the temperature. I have certain tanks that are individually heated, and I have some tanks that are not heated at all. And some empty tanks available for impulse buys now at this moment in time currently. But the temperature is my big thing. But it's all overall important. But the temperature is my big thing because I know I get fish available to me that are close in pH.
Well, and the only reason I brought water parameters up with that is there is some fish stores, and they will tell you, or it will be marked, that those were wild caught. Mm-hmm. And that's when the water parameters are a little bit, in my opinion, you need to be closer to those if they're wild caught. Whereas if they were bred in captivity and cultured in captivity, they kind of can handle a little bigger swing.
But this is going to be a side note for me, and it could be different. I'm sure there are fish stores that have more wild caught fish available. I'm not going to say there's not. I'm sure you walk in and you have some available. But coming from the beginner fish keeper who's going into the box chain store, they don't have wild caught fish. But 100%, you're right. If they're fresh out of their cozy little nature environment and they're used to this, that, and this, and you throw them in an outside tub, it might be a little bit of a shock.
Yeah, well, they're already going to be stressed out.
But going the other way, let's say I get my rosy red minnows at the box at PetSmart, and at the fish store, they look like they're always on their last leg. They don't look, they're sold as feeder fish and they're pennies. They just look awful. I'm not going to lie. But when we put them in to the koi pond outside with the koi, which I thought they would get eaten, honestly, at first, but they don't even look like the same fish. So putting them in an environment, they're wild caught, but there's still a fish that's kind of like, they're not given the best environment even at the store, and then put them in something that's going to help them.
They do better in a natural type environment. They thrive in that.
When I tried to keep rosy red minnows inside, they just didn't do very well. But when I moved them outside, they just completely turned around. And our mosquito fish outside are wild caught. It's the only one I currently have that's a wild caught fish. And the population is going crazy. They do so well outside, but there's something magical about green water. I can't explain, but it's just the food, just everything about them. It's just, they're beautiful and they reproduce, but I do not think at all, there's not a shadow in my mind that if I moved them inside, they would not do that good.
They would probably live, but
I just don't think they would thrive.
It wouldn't be their best life.
Yeah. But it's because I feel like I haven't recreated their natural environment, but I've recreated an environment the best I could to help them. But wild caught fish, I think, I never thought about, thinking back when I was first like a kid and going through my 20s fish keeping, wild caught fish, going out to like the creek and catching things or just any of that, it never entered my mind until I started hearing about it when I started getting into the community on YouTube, all the fish keepers on YouTube. There's so many things that just, when I would go to the Walmart, that's really all we had at the time. I would just get what we had, and we had one little local pet store. And like I said, she had, I say pet store, it's a fish store only, but she had mainly smaller nano fish. And I never got introduced to wild caught, the concept of that, to much later into my fish keeping journey. But you're right, they're a little bit more delicate. I feel like.
Well, and I think it plays into what your original thought was, the lifespan. Mm-hmm. I think that the wild caught can breed and live longer given the proper thriving environment.
We'll see.
I honestly do. And really, that goes to your lifespan. Generally speaking, you're smaller your fish, they will live not as long as your bigger fish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like the arowana, he has the potential to even outlive us.
How I think of it, and it's all because of this ecology class I had. I had that ecology class. I had so many epiphanies about fish keeping that I don't even know how I passed the test in that class, because all I kept thinking about was fish keeping instead of my work. But how I learned to think about it is, if a fish is small and they have a lot of babies, like the guppies, let's say, their reproduction rates really fast, about once a month on average, and they can drop a brood of little fry of like hundreds at a time. Whereas something even just a little bit bigger, the Amicus splendens, have bigger babies and less of them. They're still small, but the smaller down on the food chain they are,
yes,
the smaller they are, the more babies they have, the shorter they could have. A guppy could not be eaten in nature and live its full life, which is only going to be like 3 to 5 years, compared to something that's larger, like a silver arowana that we keep, that's going to live a lot longer. And I've never seen I've never bred a silver arowana, but I just feel like their babies are they're still small, but they're still bigger than a guppy fry.
And from our experience, that we can deduce is that their babies grow very, very quickly.
Yes, but even These are going to be smaller or lower down on the food chain than the adults because they're, again, smaller. So they have a lot of babies too because a lot of them don't make it. So that's how I think of it, is more of, yes, you are correct, 100%. Larger fish generally live longer than smaller fish. But when I start thinking of it, I can be like...
Well, you think of it as a nature aspect of where do they fit in on the food chain. So why does this make sense?
Yeah.
Well, obviously the smaller fish are predated on by the bigger fish. And then it has to be a bigger fish that predates on that bigger fish than that. So, so on and so on, obviously. So you're going to have smaller amounts going up the food chain of the amount of babies produced. I
don't know why that just, it's something so small, but it just, I had this huge, like, oh, man. And, wait, going back to the parameter, another thing that's really important, I do keep brackish fish from time to time on occasion. Not a lot, but here and there. If there's a fish, to me, it's always bumblebee gobies that you have heard. Some can be freshwater, some can be brackish. Don't assume. Always ask if they're brackish or freshwater. So, like, and mollies too. Mollies sometimes do well in not a crazy brackish tank. I'm sure, well, I guess they can go, some can go into salt. It just depends on the mollies. But don't always assume that. If they can go in both, it's always a good idea to ask, hey, do you keep salt or any type of, is this a brackish? Or they do, because that's important. That almost got me in trouble one time. I just assumed that they were freshwater gobies and they were not. It said freshwater gobies, but I don't know what stirred it. At some point in the conversation, we were just chit-chat. She's like, hey, by the way, do you know that I was like, I'm really glad you just told me that. So, yeah, going back to that. Okay. Is there anything else? I just popped in my brain.
I think the very last point ties everything that we just were talking about all together. Ultimately, between the water parameters, where they swim in the tank, everything is your already established habitat. Yeah. I think that this point here backs your water parameters and everything else up to a T. What is in the tank, substrate wise, plant wise? What does that fish require? Is it going to fit in well with what you already have in the tank?
Yeah, it's just good to kind of take a step back and be like, I know I really love this fish and I want this fish so bad, but if I bring this home, is everything going to be okay?
Yes.
Is what I have set up. If you're not ready or you don't want to, some people just want one tank and that's perfectly fine. But there might be a fish that you really want that's just not going to work in what you have, and you might have to set up a new tank and wait a little bit before you get it. So it's just good to have a plan and just take it. I know it's hard for me because I get so excited. I'm like, oh, I just can't. I just love it. But sometimes it's not a good fit. It's just I need to wait. And sometimes it really is, and I'm really glad I brought that fish home because it worked out great. So it's just, these aren't hard questions. It's just things that you should at least run through your mind, look up, contemplate. It's just good to give it some thought. Don't look past it. Even though it's so easy to look past, especially if you've kept fish for a while. Be like, oh, I know I can keep it. It's going to work. But overlooking even just how long it lives or the size that it gets, it could be really easy just to be like, oh, it'll be okay. I'll just learn as I go. And sometimes, like the arowana, I've learned as I went. It's been stressful, and we've learned together. But just doing that simple research of, hey, not only does this grow fast, but it grows large. It could have prepared me a little better.
Well, yes, and we can't even keep any plants in that tank with it. It will knock them down, move them around. And since, again, we also, not to pick on the common pleco today, but it sounds like it's common pleco pick-on day.
Yeah.
That we can't have any plants or anything else besides some driftwood and some caves and some larger rocks and stuff in there for it, because it will destroy any vegetation that we put in there.
Yeah, that's another thing that I've kind of think about that runs through my head later on, now that I've kept fish for a while, is if they need something specific. Because going back to the beta bettas, like I've kept them for a long time, but I kept them wrong for a long time, and I didn't realize that they really need somewhere to kind of rest their fin. So having a resting place for them is really important. There's some fish that, like you said, they just cannot be in a planted tank. And no matter how hard I try and no matter how much I will it to happen, they just aren't very compatible in a planted tank. And then on the flip side, there's some fish out there like the
that
guppies
require it.
that it has changed everything just simply by planting that tank. So knowing if they require something specific, like going back to that knife fish, there's nothing that I'm going to read that's going to tell me, hey, this knife fish is not going to be happy until you go back to that fish store and buy that log that it camps out at. No matter how much I read about black featherfin knife fish, nowhere in there is it going to say, hey, this fish is going to act really pouty and go back and beg for that. It was nothing fancy. It was just like a little log with a cutout. But I went back, I begged, and they let me buy it, and I put that in that tank, and it just started swimming all around and was just so happy. So there's some fish out there that just researching what they need in their tank to make them a little extra happy is helpful.
Well, and I think all these questions that you should ask yourself, internal dialogue, some of it you would want to research, but some of it is just as simple as having a conversation with yourself,
just kind of,
and you can put together a game plan just by talking to yourself about some of these very simple topics, and it's going to save you a lot of headache in the long run, and you're going to feel ultimately accomplished.
Yeah.
At the end of it, you're going to be like, wow, I made this really cool kick butt tank, and I got stuff at all levels. I got this type of habitat or decor, however you want to do it.
Yeah.
And it's a really good feeling.
Yeah. And I guess the only other thing I can think about, and this was one that I've probably out of all of these on this list, is the most recent that I think about, and it's not so much think about, is I wanted to know when they got their stock in. So when I wanted to go to the fish store to go shopping, I knew what the best day of the week was to go fish shopping. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but I don't want to buy a fish that just came out of gosh only knows how long travel days, just put out of the bag into the fish tank, whether they're quarantined or not. And the best case scenario, they've been quarantined for 30 days and all is well, and this is a moot point. But I don't necessarily want to buy a fish. It could be the most beautiful fish in the world, and I've waited forever, but I don't want to buy a fish that just came out of a fish bag from 2 weeks of travel and is like super stressed out. And I hope that makes sense. But I know where I often buy fish, they get fish in on Thursdays. So I like to wait till like Monday, Tuesday. And I go, if I'm going to impulse buy fish, which I don't recommend, but we all do it, I wait a couple of days so they have some time to, eat. They've had a couple meals, hopefully. They've colored up a little bit. Hopefully they're not stressed out as much anymore, and you can get a better read of their personality, because I feel like fresh out of a fish bag from a week in the mail, you can't get that. Or
on a truck, however, they come to your local big box store.
They're stressed out. You can't get a true reading on them, if that makes sense. I like to give it a couple days. And that's, like I said, something that I haven't even contemplated. Like a day, like any day is a good day, but kind of find out when they usually get their fish in so you can catch it before they even take them out of the fish bag. So maybe you can just like buy them right out of, so you can just take them out yourself and acclimate them and quarantine them and get them all ready.
Well, that way they're only getting stressed once, not twice.
That's what I'm saying. You just don't want to, they're already stressed. that's when they're most vulnerable to get sick in my eyes. And then you're just going to re-scoop them and bag them. And then it just, does it work out? Yeah. But if you can give yourself, like, okay, I'm going to go to the fish store on Monday. They get their fish in a couple of days ago. It gives me some time to like research, maybe ask them, hey, what'd you get in? Research out of that what you want, and then give it a couple of days or something. That has helped. And I feel like that's something I've recently learned. And like you said, not all of these you even have to ask. You can just run through your own head and be like, is this a good idea? And some of them, talking to the employee will solve a lot of problems.
A lot of them tie in together like really well. The peaceful, the aggressive, and how many of them you need to maybe either curb that or it'll counteract that a little bit. There's a lot of these topics that kind of just smash together really well, that by doing one of them solves several of them.
Oh, yeah. And not only, I don't know which one this would tie into, but this is another one I just thought about. Later on, I've learned some fish do better, and this is all like super specific questions. This is, but my tetras do better since I've been keeping them in a longer tank versus a taller tank. So when you're going in and doing a research or talking to someone and finding out what level of the tank they occupy, maybe ask, hey, there's not very many fish that I kept that really enjoyed the more skinny, tall tanks. Most fish like to swim more side to side versus up and down. But there are still some fish that can enjoy that footprint. So if you have a not standard type tank, more of those specialty tanks that are, you've seen them that just, not an everyday tank you see that have a different footprint. If you have a
weird, like a corner or an octagon or even an oval tank.
Yeah.
I know the oval tanks are getting to be like,
the cylinder
tanks are getting to be very, very
You might find
common.
out, and that's, again, like I said, kind of more of I wouldn't say nitpicky, but a more specific type question. But I know that that's something that I've learned, that not all fish I've had some of those skinny.
But that ties into like habitat.
Yeah,
how big your tank is.
I'm going through my brain trying to think if there's anything else I can think of.
That all ties in really well with those two for sure.
Yeah, and like we said, it all kind of comes down to what kind of fish keeper you keep. Because I know breeding tanks are going to be far different than if you just want one piece in your living room as your focal point. You don't have any desire to breed. So even that, just knowing what your end goal is. Do you want to have a peaceful community tank but nothing breeds, and you just want to keep, even if it's just guppies, you want to keep all male guppies or all female guppies, knowing how quick they breed and just general things about them, because like I said, some fish are you can learn everything about them, but until you keep them and know their personality. But these are things that I'm glad that I've learned and grown as a fish keeper, to know that even the basic, knowing how big they get, how long do they live, what do they eat, are they going to be compatible with my neocaridina shrimp, because I want to breed my shrimp. Are they going to eat all my shrimplets? Or if you want to breed them, do they eat all my baby? Are they going to eat all my baby? Do I need to separate them? So even though if you've been fish keeping for a while, and this is like, of course I want to know that. Maybe to the beginner that's never thought about these, like me when I was in my younger than my teens keeping fish, I didn't give it any thought. And as I've learned, my fish keeping skills have improved just by asking these basic questions about the fish I want to keep.
Well, these are just little internal dilemmas that you can bounce off yourself or your better half or the person at the fish store, even however you prefer to do it. But ultimately, to help you be a better fish keeper, have that wonderful community tank in my mind, and just to make everything go more smoothly and you're not discouraged in the hobby.
Yeah, because you don't want to get some of these Amicus splendens like I did and put them in your... it wasn't a community tank, but it was a really nice Corridora tank, and they definitely all got snacked up before I even batted an eye. So whether you want to keep a community tank and you're wanting to get a new fish, and just knowing if you can, if they're going to be compatible. You don't want to fall in love with a fish that you just absolutely love and you want to keep, and then you put it in that tank, and then you have that beautiful fish you want to keep, but all of your old fish are gone. It's like, So I hope that this has helped, I guess, is the bottom line. I hope some of these questions maybe just pop into your head just a little bit next time you're fish shopping, or if you're contemplating wanting to get a fish tank for the first time. These are some things that you haven't thought about that will help you start your research.
Yep, starts you down that rabbit hole.
But again, thank you so much for listening. And if you want to watch this podcast, you can always check us out over at ScienceGal Aquatics on YouTube under memberships. And don't forget to check out ScienceGalAquatics.com. I really appreciate you being here and listening.
Yep. Thank you for tuning in, and check out the website for just how we care for these fish that we're talking about. The stuff we've and how we make a nice habitat for them.
But again, thank you so much. And until next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.